guys, to celebrate 100,000 subscribers, I've decided to do another Q&A video. The last one was quite a while already, and you guys responded with a lot of questions. I trimmed it down a little bit because some of them are repeat questions that I've already answered in previous Q&A videos, such as what got you into the hobby, what's your favorite keyboard, what are your favorite switches, how do you store your keyboards, etc, etc. Also, there were a lot of questions that went, are you ever going to review X, with X something that I've already reviewed before? So if you want me to review something and it already exists, check the channel. There is a good chance I've already reviewed it. I have over 500 keyboard reviews already. And of course, some questions are just not particularly interesting, such as what's the best easily accessible cheap switch or keyboard, or how do I get tons of keyboards for no money without making any effort? Anyway, we've got quite a lot to get through, so let's get to it. Any plans on building a custom keyboard anytime soon? Not really. Sometimes I customize keyboards or I do restoration jobs, but building one from the ground up? Probably not. Well, maybe if I ever get all the parts to a Hyper 7 keyboard. What is the best looking keyboard you have ever seen based purely on looks? Ooh, that's a difficult one. I'd say it'll be a good race between the Black Focus FK2001, the Franklin FKB2, the Industrial Black Badge Model M, the Sega TerraDrive keyboard, and the Data General Dasher. When you start dating somebody, how long do you wait to start talking about the keyboard stuff? As long as possible. What kind of childhood trauma is responsible for your beautiful and creative swear words? Probably learning Latin and ancient Greek in school. That tends to get you very creative with words. Now, in all seriousness though, I just really like languages. I love to play around with them. You may have noticed a fair bit of wordplay in my videos. That's because of that. Do you still plan on making a top X loudest switches video? The problem is, it's just not a very fun video to make because there are so many nuances and caveats and whatnot that you have to address, and I just don't really like nuancing myself to death. It makes for very annoying filming material in my opinion. I may well do it someday, it's just kind of a pain to get to. Any merch coming up that can ship to the Philippines? Yes, actually. Well, I don't know if they ship to the Philippines, but my friend Kyle has made some Gyros themed t-shirts that you can buy. I'll put the link to that in the description below. Check it out. Would you ever do a redux of your top X videos? Well, the linear one is really outdated. That could do with a redux. I think the tactile and clicky ones are still fairly up to date. But they're just not really fun videos for me to make. I know they're really popular, they get tons of views, but it's not really my thing, so I don't know. Fairly unlikely, I'd say. What are your current thoughts on the direction of the mechanical keyboard community, such as r/mechanical keyboards? To be honest, I don't really follow the Reddit all that much because whenever I take a look at it, it's just highly colored RGB 60% keyboards and people claiming to want to eat them. Also, it's not really my kind of keyboard, so it doesn't really apply to me generally. When did you start making up your own custom Imperial units, and why did you do it? That must have been sometime I was still in the UK. See, most Brits will deny it, but actually they still use the Imperial system there quite a lot. If you give someone your height in centimeters or your weight in kilograms, they have no idea what you're talking about. They still use feet and inches and pounds and stones of all things to measure that sort of thing, and that just absolutely baffled me, so I'm pretty sure it came off of that. Would you ever consider doing a video showcasing your entire keyboard collection, like some people do with their Blu-ray collections? I already did something similar multiple times, but going through the whole wall and then each individual keyboard, that's gonna take way too fucking long. I'm not gonna do that. Just watch the reviews. I've reviewed 90% of what I have already by now. What keyboard is your white whale, the one you really want but can't seem to find, or it keeps getting away from you? Ooh, that must be the Bertold keyboard. And the annoying thing is, the person who got it for an absolute song as well. I could have given 10 times as much for that thing. When do you think the stock of reasonably When do you think the stock of reasonably priced vintage... Fucking hell. When do you think the stock of reasonably priced vintage keyboards will run out? It's kind of hard to say, but to be honest, there's always another deal if you look hard enough. Besides, although the prices have increased, it has helped to get more vintage keyboards out of the woodwork, so more and more keyboards are propping up, so that is good. Your take on the buckling spring keyboards sold by Ellipse of Model F keyboards. Oh yeah, the Repro Model F. It's going to be amazing. I did buy one, but it's a printed ISO model, so it's taking a while to make. But I am really looking forward to that, and that's definitely going to get its own review, and probably its own trailer too. Why are you so damn smexy? Oh, sweetie, thank you. How do you feel about alternative keyboard layouts, such as Dvorak or Colmac? Honestly, for the life of me, I can't see the point. And in fact, I don't think any benefits have ever been comprehensively proven. And even if they were, I don't think they'd be worth the effort of unlearning a lifetime of using QWERTY and then starting over with something new again. I'm sure it's a great benefit to some people, it's just not for me. Thoughts on Doom Eternal, yay or nay? I haven't played Doom Eternal. I have played Doom 2016, but I thought it wasn't really a Doom game, so I skipped on Doom Eternal. What do you think is the most overrated and the most underrated Switch? Overrated, Cherry MX Brown. I don't think I need to say more than that. Underrated, SMK 2nd generation MX mount. These things are fantastic. They're MX keycap compatible, they're MX plate mount compatible, they're dirt cheap, and they can be gotten new old stock in bulk. I don't understand why not more people use these things. Do you think beige will ever return to being the standard color for computer cases, monitors, and peripherals? Excuse me. Nah, and to be honest, I'm sure that's a good thing. Even among classics, I've found that the black versions of them tend to look 100 times better. Have you had a chance to play around with some typewriters? Are you interested in them, and what's your opinion on their keyboards? I already did a typewriter review ages ago, and a Selectric as well, actually. They're interesting, but when people say this feels like a typewriter when they're talking about a keyboard, I think they haven't really tried a typewriter, because the two feel very, very different. Sellers and users of RGB keyboards, do you advocate rehabilitation or punishment? RGB itself doesn't really bother me, to be honest. I just think it's a bit of a waste that manufacturers put their money and energy and their focus into that sort of thing, rather than thinking about things like switches and build quality and things that do actually matter, in my opinion. That's really the only thing that bothers me about them. Although I guess they only do that because consumers want RGB. What are the best and worst laptop keyboards that you know of? Frankly, I know almost nothing about laptops. I already own a PC, and laptops are just worse, more expensive PCs that you can lug around. But I wouldn't be able to use it anywhere, so I don't really need a laptop, so it's very much outside of my zone of expertise, I'm afraid. What keyboard of your arsenal is the most used? That's without a doubt my Zenith, because that's the one I use at work, and I don't rotate that one out, unlike the keyboard I use at home. What do you think about mixing and swapping parts of switches? To be honest, I don't really have anything against it. I just think it's a bit of a shame that it's only being done with Cherry MX switches, because, you know, that switch has been done to death by now. I think we've tried pretty much everything we can. Maybe it's time to move on. And if you just go and try a completely different type of switch, I think you'll find there's a much bigger difference between that and Cherry MX than, you know, using an MX slider from that brand, or using a transparent housing, or, you know, lubing it with this or that. You know, to me, that's just not particularly interesting, only swapping parts of one switch. You know, go out, try some more stuff. I think you'll find that more interesting, I reckon. When are we getting an audio book? I need more of your voice. Honestly, I have been thinking of doing voice work. I'm very busy at the moment, but I'd really like to try and get into it. What do you think about Holy Panda switches? Ooh, you'll find out soon-ish. Someone actually sent a bunch of them in at my request. It's going to take a little bit of time because I still want to loop them, but you'll find out soon-ish. Is there any type of keycaps that worries you or that ruined an otherwise okay keyboard? To be honest, keycaps are not very high up on my list of priorities. For me, by far the most important thing are the switches, and the rest is just a bonus. I can't recall an instance of a keyboard being nice, but the keycaps being so bad that they actually ruined it for the rest of the keyboard. Are there any other content creators in the mech keyboard community that you follow? To be honest, not really. Almost all of them seem to focus on MX type keyboards or MX type switches and modding them, and I just don't really care about that at all, so I just leave it to others. Additionally, I try to avoid watching or reading material about keyboards that I still have to review, because I want the opinions in the videos to be my opinions, without being, influenced by other people's opinions, even if just subconsciously. That said, I do watch other content creators' videos on old keyboards sometimes, such as when Taiha Types does a video on Alps keyboards, and I watch a lot of Glasses videos. He's quite nice. He's very funny, I think. And when V Westlife or LGR does a video on keyboards, I tend to watch those as well, although I don't think they'd consider themselves keyboard content creators, but they are very good. Their material is excellent, I think. In fact, I think of all keyboard content creators, I must be by far the least professional. Do you plan on doing a destruction of some of the most odoriferous abominations of keyboards you've ever used? A lot of people ask me to destroy keyboards, but I think they overlook that first and foremost, I'm a collector. Even a real turd of a keyboard can be very interesting for me. Besides, a really, really good keyboard is only really good if you have a piece of shit to compare it to. Have you considered getting in touch with a company to manufacture a special Gielsran 22 keyboard that, based on your experience and taste, is the pinnacle of keyboard engineering? I'd be more than willing to lend my advice to a project like that, but really doing it all the way from the ground up myself, just nah. Nope. What is your favorite modern premium switch like a Zelio, and when are you going to show the 40% buckling spring keyboard? My favorite modern switches are the SteelSeries Apex Pro Hall effect ones. I forgot what they're called. I think Omnipoint. Yeah, that's it, Omnipoint. They're really good. I can't recommend them enough. As for the 40% buckling spring keyboard, I'm going to do that one when I get some replacement plates in, because the original ones were plastic and they just all broke immediately, so I'm waiting on replacement parts for that. What is the worst feature you have ever seen on a keyboard? To be honest, most features aren't actually negative. They tend to just be kind of meh or completely useless at worst, but not actually negative. But I do recall one instance of a feature ruining an otherwise great keyboard, which is the Razer Huntsman, which comes with really nice smooth optoelectric switches, and it's quite well kitted out for the price. But they made the switches way too light and they put the actuation point far too high up, so it actuated as soon as you just looked at it, and that was really a bad combination. And I understand why, because then they can say, oh, it's very reactive, it's more responsive than other keyboards at that, but it's too responsive, and that rendered the keyboard kind of useless, unfortunately. That's one instance of, I recall, feature really ruining a keyboard, and is a really good showcase for adjustable actuation as well. What are your thoughts on getting an ultra custom board? Taiha Types, the biggest mechanical keyboards creator, has mentioned that he watches you, and if you organize something, I think more people in the keyboard community can learn about and appreciate vintage keyboards, and you can find something modern that you like. I didn't even know he watches me. I think we approach keyboards from exactly the opposite angle. He likes to take the modern stuff, very high grade materials, build a keyboard from the ground up, and try to make them as best as they can possibly be within the MX frame. Whereas I do the exact opposite. I like to take stock keyboards and I like to look outside of the MX frame, looking at all different switches without modifying them, just as they are. So we really approach this from a completely different angle. The thing is, back in the 80s, companies had a huge amount of expertise about keyboards, and slowly, bit by bit, we're relearning all those lessons that they learned 40 years ago already, and I think there is huge value in that. That said, the MX design is just not really my thing. I don't think there is a single kind of keyboard switch I would make using Cherry MX as a design base. I just don't think it has any advantages. Are you interested in giving Ortho a second try? Just no. Well, honestly, what is the benefit of Ortho? Whenever I ask someone why use Ortho, all they can ever come up with is Stagger is just a leftover from typewriters, so it's less ergonomic, which is the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. Just because something is older doesn't mean it's worse. So why is this? I don't think there's ever been any research, just like with the Dvorak and Colmac, I don't think there's ever been any research that points out that ortholinear is better in any way, and yet people take it as gospel. They just go, well, ortholinear is more ergonomic, that's beyond question. And I go, really? How? But then they can't ever answer that. If you could only keep one keyboard, what would it be? I don't know, man. That's like asking a father to give up one of his sons. I just can't do it. I have a couple of favorites, sure, but there's not one I could pick knowing that I would never be able to use the rest. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. Why do you not cover more aftermarket Cherry switches or custom keyboards? I'm not interested in the slightest in them. Thoughts on Ducky, favorite layout, and open boards versus closed in. Don't own one, focus, and closed in. Have you ever killed any keyboards? Yeah, I dismantled a whole bunch for parts, usually broken ones or duplicate ones, and one or two bit the dust by accident, but really not a lot. I'm generally quite careful with my keyboards. Excluding solenoids, what's the loudest vintage keyboard you ever typed on? Probably a Model F. I reckon capbuck springs are a little bit louder than beam springs even. How would you design a keyboard switch from the ground up or improving upon a different switch design? No reason to reinvent the wheel. I'd start off with something existing and solid. There's been hundreds of different key switch designs. Why not learn some lessons from them? I always see financial people using a 10-key calculator even when they have a spreadsheet program in front of them all the time. Do you think it's because people prefer the feel of a paper tape recording calculator over the keyboard or some other reason? No, I do it as well. It's just faster in practice, I think. Would you ever consider doing a podcast because you have an amazing voice? Cheers, mate, but probably not. I'd love to do some voice work, but podcast, probably not. I'm probably not streaming either. Which keyboard among yours is worth the most? Probably the Beamship, which is this thing here. Well, at least it cost me the most. How exactly do you pronounce Girosram 22? Just like that. What to you would be the next biggest step forward in mechanical switch technology? Well, we've pretty much perfected linear switches now with those motherfuckers. We've pretty much perfected linear switches now with those modern contactless ones, so all we need to do is clicky and tactile now. Just need to revive the old masters in those categories and have them replace Cherry switches, and that's it, we've solved keyboards. What do I need to do to get that voice? Lots of whiskey, I reckon. Cheers, guys. Delicious. What excites you the most for the future of keyboarding? New switches, new keycap form factors, new keyboard designs, etc. What do you see coming down the pipeline that interests you the most? Switches, switches, switches. Everything else is a bonus. I think if there's one thing manufacturers should focus on, it's switches. And preferably as far removed from Cherry MX as possible. We've done all we can with that design. It's time to move on to greener pastures. Do you own any Korean boards? Since Korea is sort of getting into the keyboard community, I thought this would be a decent question. It's interesting you mentioned that because from what I've been told, the hobby of mechanical keyboards actually originated in Korea. That said, I did review an Abco board a while ago and that was quite excellent. What is your current other hobby or passion besides keyboards? I really enjoy traveling. I'm very keen on that. I'm very much into games, both board and video, and I recently picked up Airsoft as well. Shit, that thing is loud. The ISO DE and other ISO layouts are severely underrepresented, obviously due to smaller markets. Do you use keyboards with your native layout, or did you transition towards ANSI for your daily writing? Over here, the native layout is ANSI as it happens, but I actually prefer UK ISO and Focus. But that said, I mean, I've done hundreds of different keyboards with hundreds of different layouts, so I'm fairly flexible now when it comes to that. Are you having any keyboard project to do during the pandemic, since it can be boring at the moment? I did my How I Make Videos video during the lockdown, but I've been back in the lab full time since July, so I haven't exactly been bored since. Thoughts on the Fujitsu LiberTouch and those new Silo beam spring switches from Kona store? I haven't tried LiberTouch, but I can't wait to try the Silo switches. They really ought to be something, I think. Of the Cherry clones, which do you think actually have some potential? Also, for a unique take, what design changes would a Cherry MX Brown need to actually feel tactile? Honestly, the more I think about MX, the less I can be bothered with them. I just don't give a shit about them. Their design is too limited, especially with regards to tactility. By the way, more on that during the Holy Pandas video. What was the most flawed keyboard you've ever had the misfortune to own? I think the single most ill-conceived keyboard ever must be the projection keyboard. It's probably not the worst key feel I've ever tried, but as a keyboard concept, it's the stupidest, most useless brain hemorrhage ever shat into existence, I think. What is the most offensively average keyboard you've ever used? Like one that's so incredibly just okay that it's annoying. Oh, fuck it. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep hammering the same point over and over, but basically anything modern and standard that uses MX switches. Sometimes people ask me for recommendations, should I get that or that? And I don't see the difference. To me, all those modern Chinese clone keyboards are exactly identical. They're just very well priced, okay keyboard with very meh switches and no features. They're all the same to me. In fact, most premium keyboards are exactly the same to me as well, just 3 or 4 times as expensive. Will you ever do any non-keyboard videos? It's interesting you mentioned that. Way before I did keyboard videos, I used to do chemistry videos from the lab I worked in as a student. And ironically, I now work in the same lab again. So yeah, it's possible that I would do something else. I just don't know what or when, but yeah, that's possible. Are there any plans for more retro computer reviews? You've done the IBM 5155 and Compaq Portable 2, and I was wondering if it would ever be a regular feature on your channel. Well, it won't be, but I've got 1 or 2 more that I want to cover if I can. They're works in progress at the moment. Why are you so averse to compact and ergonomic keyboards? Your typing technique is cursed. See, the way I type doesn't lend itself to RSI. It's your correct typing techniques. That's what get people RSI, touch typing, and then you need ergonomic keyboards. But the way I type, you don't need them because it doesn't lend itself towards getting RSI. It's very weird. It's like people telling me I need induction heating even though I've already got gas at home. What is the longest keyboard you have ever seen? I don't know if the Bertold beats it in length, but the longest one I have is... Jesus Christ. Fucking hell. The Acom. What mechanical switch feels close to a rubber dome switch? Alps SKCM Neon Green and ITW Magnetic Valve. What is the most badass looking keyb you have ever owned? The Chiron aircraft carrier and the IBM Beamship come to mind. What is the most tactile only MX switch, clones included, you have ever tried? Box Royal if you count them as MX type. Usually I don't count box type switches as MX type switches, but the tactile element is pretty much the same in this case, so I'm just choosing to house them under that category at the moment. What keyb has the most keys? Well, that's the Acom I just showed you. I think it's 189 keys off the top of my head. What is the best keyb in your opinion and why? The best keyboard is always the one you like the most, for whatever reason. If that's the keyboard you like, then it's the keyboard for you. If, hypothetically, you could have any Switch manufactured again exactly as it was originally, what Switch would it be and why? There are several candidates for that, but capacitive buckling springs, Hall effects and beam springs are already being redone, so what's left is Blue Alps. I think everybody should be able to try out Blue Alps at least. What do you think about the new Utemu snap spring switches? I haven't tried them yet, but I'm definitely interested. I found out about them very early on, but they were quite difficult to get a hold of at the time, so I kind of shelved the project, but I definitely want to try them out. It's one of those new designs that piques my interests. What do you prefer, Quake or Unreal Tournament? Honestly, I love both of them so much. I played the shit out of all of them. But if I had to pick a favourite, it would be the original Unreal Tournament from 1999. That's still the best one in my opinion. Star Wars or Warhammer 40,000? Star Wars. I hate 40k. Do you have a girlfriend or a wife, and do you plan to have kids? Oh, God no, I'm single and I'm not planning to have kids. Wouldn't mind having a partner at some point though. Have you ever been a fan of sports, or more specifically a fan of hockey? Not really. I used to do a lot of swimming and climbing, but always on my own, and I never watch any sports. How would you feel if the US would actually switch to metric? It's up to them really, it's not my problem. I just find it hilarious that they would adhere to such an ancient set of measurements while the rest of the planet has already moved on to things that actually work, you know. And the ironic thing is, a lot of my viewers that are American engineers and scientists have commented on how annoying it is to have to work with the imperial system. They much prefer metric and they have to keep switching between the two, which is apparently very annoying. And I can really see why too. Is the sound or feel of the keyboard more important to you? The feel, but the sound is quite important to me as well. What's the best travel experience you've had? Ooh, that's a difficult one. I've been on so many amazing journeys so far. Some favourites that come to mind are Cambodia, Iceland, Vietnam, China, America, South Africa, Norway and Indonesia. But I think my favourite one so far was the Peru trip. I've got so many amazing stories from that one. Where in England are you from, if you even are English? I mean, I'm slightly confused as to whether you moved to Holland as a Brit or vice versa, but judging from your accent, you're not only British but local to me. I live in West Yorkshire, by the way. I'm Dutch, but I lived in the UK for 4.5 years, which is also when I started getting into keyboards and started making videos, hence the frequent confusion. But I am 100% Dutch. But thanks for the compliment, though. What is the weirdest thing ever shipped to you? I think it was Ukrainian dried fish that I was supposed to manually gut. That was something else. Battery 3, scene 2, I think, or 3. If you had to build your dream board from any parts, compatibility doesn't matter, what would you build? I'd build something very big with macro keys and a calculator, a bit like a Focus 9000, except with beam springs or with Blue Alps. Actually, the latter wouldn't be too difficult to make, but I wouldn't know which Blue Alps keyboard to gut to make it happen. What is the best feeling switch of all time, in your opinion? Beam springs, not a shimmer of doubt. Are you interested in building a custom keyboard yourself, such as a 75%? Not hugely, no. I'd much rather convert something old and interesting to be used on a modern computer. You getting a play button for this? I don't know, man. YouTube hasn't contacted me at all. What would you say is the best or your favourite rubber dome keyboard? Well, that's an interesting question. I'd say it's between the Abco, which is possibly the best feeling, the Scorpius, which is the best sounding, or the FK9200, which is the most useful one. Do you plan on doing a bunch of newer mechanical gaming keyboard videos now that companies are moving away from Cherry MX? Yes, modern keyboards with different switch designs are very much something I'd like to cover. What is your favourite set of keycaps from any keyboard ever made? Honestly, I think it's hard to beat old Honeywells. Do you still play Killing Floor 2? And if so, what are your favourite perks and weapons? God, I haven't played Killing Floor in ages. I used to play Demo the most often. And I really like the lever action in Killing Floor 1, but they ruined that in Killing Floor 2, so I use different weapons instead. What keyboards should I consider for both gaming and typing? Honestly, don't read too much into the whole typing versus gaming keyboards. I found linear keyboards that are excellent to type on and clicky keyboards that are great to game on. Just get something you like and don't buy too much into other people's dogmas, including mine. I mean, my opinions are just opinions too. What do you most wish you knew before you got into keyboards and YouTube? I wish I'd gotten into the hobby earlier, if nothing else, because it's much more expensive and more difficult to find certain types of keyboard now. Are you with glasses in the war against Cherry Browns? Yeah, that guy, he gets it. Would you rather use a Smith Corona keyboard for an hour or Imperial units for the rest of your life? I choose the Smith Corona. If you had to choose between Focus's simple macro functionality or their calculator to bring to modern keyboards, what would it be? I think the calculator. In truth, Focus was not the only company that did macros right back in the day. But frankly, nowadays, mostly it's the software that's the big problem. Just get rid of that and 95% of the problem is solved. Have you ever thought about voicing documentaries? I'd love to, actually. Can you make a video that is only swearing? Just play a video game with me sometime and you'll get exactly what you want. What are your top 5 favorite keyboard logo badges? Whew, good one. I really like the black IBM and Zenith Data Systems metal badges. I think those are real standouts. Other ones I really like are the gold Northgate badges, the leading edge logo, and the Focus 1001 badges, like 2001, 3001, etc. What's your favorite in-production keyboard and switches? Now, this may get outdated soonish with all the new designs coming up, but honestly, this SteelSeries Apex Pro is absolutely excellent. It does everything I want exactly the way it wants to. It's really good. It's just such a performance. One of the best surprises in a modern keyboard I've had for a while. What will happen when you review all your keyboards? Well, frankly, not every single one is interesting enough to show you guys, but this does tie into something that I've decided a while back. After 2020, I'm going to stop doing weekly reviews. No worries, I'll still be doing keyboard reviews, just not necessarily every week anymore. I've still got a bunch of cool things I want to show you, and if something really interesting comes out, I definitely do want to cover that going forward as well, but it won't be a video a week anymore necessarily, and it may not even be on a Saturday morning anymore. I could theoretically acquire keyboards faster than I would be able to review them, especially with all the commercial and personal donations that you guys have been giving me, which is really heartwarming, by the way. It's really cool to see how much stuff you guys were willing to send in for me to review. But of late, I've had to be very, very selective with that, precisely because I knew I wouldn't have 50 or so reviews a year to be able to do them in. So that's a little early announcement for you. I'll be repeating that around the end of the year, I guess. Can you describe your favorite Razer switches, why they are, and if and how they are similar to Hall effect switches? Oh, it's definitely the optoelectric ones. I can't stress how important and how big of a difference it is that companies are now taking the leap to contactless based designs rather than contact based ones. It's such a great development. But in terms of actual in the field performance and key feel and that sort of thing, I don't think one would necessarily be able to tell the difference between optoelectric and Hall effect switches. They are very similar in how they perform, just different in how they actually do it. Beamspring keyboards have since skyrocketed in price in the past few years. Do you think your reviews on your Beamspring keyboards attributed to the rise? And have you considered selling yours for profit? I get blamed a lot for keyboard inflation. There's probably a core of truth to that, especially the Dell 8101 craze and the Blue Alps inflation. Those were maybe a bit too coincidental. But as for selling them, I haven't sold any keyboards since I've had the means to be able to buy them myself, i.e. since I moved out of the UK and therefore got an actual salary in. But selling them, no. A lot of people tell me, why don't you just sell this keyboard? It's worth so much. But then I go, yeah, but think of how difficult and expensive it would be to buy another one back. I mean, I want the keyboard. What was your favorite childhood television show? Whew, that's a good one. I think it might be Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, Z. I really enjoyed watching them, but then again, only really for the first 2 seasons. After that, I really couldn't be bothered by either of them anymore. Honest opinion on the Cherry line of switches. I think people misunderstand my stance on Cherry a little bit, and I can kind of understand where that comes from. See, I don't think Cherry is the worst thing in the world. I mean, those people that think that clearly have never tried the full 2000 or the projection keyboard or many of the old really, really crappy keyboards I show occasionally. You know, anything that has a waning in front of it is infinitely worse than Cherry MX. I just think they're very meh, very average, not particularly interesting. And most of all, I can't fathom for the life of me why they've become the basis for all modern mechanical keyboards, pretty much. That I just can't comprehend. What is your first computer and your first keyboard? Whew. My first ever computer was a hand-me-down IBM 5155 from my dad's office, which came with a fold-down Model F keyboard. So I started off on a really high note. What is the weirdest keyboard you have collected? Whew, that's a great question. I've got plenty of weird shit. Like the Moltron one-handed keyboard, the Comfort Ergo keyboard, and something I'm going to show you at the end of the year. But I think the one that might take the cake is the Safe Type keyboard with the car mirrors. That is just out of this world. What was your inspiration for the channel? Well, like I said, I already had the channel before I did keyboard videos. I did chemistry videos. But I would say the single biggest thing that got me into making keyboard videos were V Westlife's keyboard videos. He's a YouTuber that... he's not really a keyboard YouTuber, he just does a whole bunch of old hardware. And they occasionally included old keyboards, and I had old keyboards, so I thought, yeah, let's do that as well and give it my own spin on things. Which keyboard is the oldest you own? At the moment, the oldest one is this, the Microswitch 53RW4-1. That one was made in 1970. Oh yeah! Do you play any RPGs for PC? I used to play tons of Diablo 2. But apart from that, I think I'm not a huge RPG guy. And it didn't help that Diablo 3 sucked massive ass. And it looks like Diablo 4 is going to go the same way. No skill trees again. So, yeah, not really, I would say. Are you a Rotterdammer? What are you talking about? I've never stabbed anyone in my life. If you were limited to only using one switch for the rest of your life, what would it be? Probably Blue Alps. I think I'd miss them the most. Is your YouTube channel your full-time job? Oh god, not at all. No, I don't consider this a job at all. It's just a hobby for me, nothing else. My daytime job is as a technician, kind of managing the comings and goings of a chemical research laboratory at my local university. I'm a chemist by trade. How do you maintain the peak performance of your keyboards? Do mechanical switches need maintenance? Well, some do, others don't, but don't forget I have to keep changing keyboards every week in order to test them out for you guys, so the vast majority of my keyboards don't really get any long-term use. Have you considered renting a storage unit to buy and store more keyboards for reviews? Nah, I might move keyboards into another cupboard in this room to make some more space, but especially with the upload frequency going down after 2020, I don't think it's really necessary. Would you revisit some keyboard reviews you made in the past and redo them to improve the quality of the video? I have done quite a lot of Redux videos already, and I've got 1 or 2 more in the pipeline. Beyond that, I really don't know yet. Will you get a new monitor? Because since I've been a subscriber since 2017, you had that Samsung one. Yeah, I think this monitor I must have had for 15 years or something by now. At the time, it was one of the top range models, and I got it for a very good price because it had a small crack in the housing. So it was actually fairly cheap, and it still hasn't killed it, so that was a really good deal, I like to think. Kyle keeps pushing me to buy a new one, but frankly I just don't really see what it would bring to the table. But then again, I'm sure as soon as I buy one, it's going to be like getting your first mobile phone, or getting your first mechanical keyboard actually. You have no idea why you would get one, and then suddenly you can never do without one anymore. I got a clicky Matthias board, and to my surprise, Matthias white switches have a second bump near the bottom, which ruins the switch feel for me. It makes it feel almost cheap. How does Blue Alps compare to Matthias whites, and do they also have a second bump? Yes, all clicky and tactile Alps switches have a second bump. That's because of the switch plate, which is slightly tactile of itself. However, that said, complicated Alps have a much less pronounced second bump than Matthias switches due to the way the contacts work. M&K or controller for gaming? Oh man, M&K through and through. I hate controllers. I don't know why those things ever got invented. I hate them with every fiber of my being. They should just all be thrown in a giant fire and destroyed. Is your 1986 Audi B3 still stationary? I saw that car ages ago. I really liked it as well, but it was just not very practical, and frankly I don't need it. I rarely venture outside my city and I cycle everywhere within it, so I just got rid of it. If you were forced to use one keyboard for a year, would it be one that sounds like a rattly Gateron Blue but types like an Alps Blue, or one that sounds like an Alps Blue but types like a membrane? Good question. I still prefer key feel to key sound, so I get the one that feels like Blue Alps. How many keyboards do you own? I'm at about 330 different models right now. In your ideal world, would you prefer to poop more but never have to wipe, or poop way less but it's really difficult to get clean? Well, poop more, obviously, because it sounds like they would take the same amount of time, but one would leave you with a shitty asshole and the other wouldn't. How do you think the current shortage of popular mechanical switches, such as Box Royal and Box Burnt Orange, will affect the keyboard community? Does the community even care about stuff like that? I genuinely wouldn't know. What thing do you want to get into, but you don't know where to start, or you do and you just need a kick in the butt? Learning Spanish and Italian. What's your opinion on the modern full-sized keyboard layout that we use since the Model M? Which keys would you change, remove, or add? Good question. I'd keep it Win keyless because I think Windows keys are negatively useful, and I would redesign the numpad into a 20-key numpad, much like I did on my F107. But apart from that, it's all good. I leave it pretty much as it is. Why do you prefer older keyboards to newer ones? Well, they just focus more on the things I like, such as good switches, good build quality, and functional form factors, you know, rather than pretty lights, portability, and colored keycaps. What's your favorite cheese? Oh, I love many cheeses, especially really old Gouda cheeses, blue cheeses, and French ones. I've actually got one here. French cheese, that's my dinner. But I'm not sure I'd be able to pick a particular favorite. Any more info on that red, massively tactile Alps clone you showed off a billion videos ago? Oh yeah, the 95% tactile one. No, I wish I had a stash of them somewhere or could find one. I would have some interesting projects lined up. They're probably not even good, but I'd really want to try them out. Waffles or pancakes? Obviously pancakes, but not the small fluffy ones that they have in America, but you know, proper pancakes. Big flat ones, big as a pizza, with cheese and bacon on. That's a proper pancake. What's your favorite alcoholic beverage? Ooh, it kind of depends on the type. Favorite lager beer, Hertog Jan. Favorite non-lager beer, Gulden Draak. Favorite whiskey, Ardbeg Corrie Vrecken. And favorite cocktail, Nazgul. Cheers, guys. Delicious. What mic do you use? It's an SE Electronics X1 with a Cube 4 Nano audio interface. Do you think low profile switches will be the future of mechanical keyboards? God, I hope not, but it wouldn't be the first time in history. In fact, all the modern full height switches such as Cherry MX and whatnot, they were once considered to be low profile switches as well, and everybody immediately switched to them, so who knows? What trends have you seen in mechanical keyboards since you started your channel that you have liked or hated? I really like the recent switch away from Cherry MX into different technologies such as Hall effect, optoelectric and click bars. I think all of those have done a massive favor to the keyboard market. Ones that I hate, things like backlighting and whatnot that just, shift the focus away from things I actually think are important. And of course, the obsession with small keyboards, which I'll never understand. What's your favorite video that you made? Oh, that's another great question. Believe it or not, but none of my favorite videos are keyboard reviews. They're actually the trailers. I just really, really love doing them. I don't actually make them to create anticipation for the videos. I love doing them. I think they're so much fun. And among them, I think my Massive Attack music video for the Optimus Maximus keyboard is probably my favorite. And of course, the keyboard that I shot with Kyle, where I showed my studio and whatnot, the studio tour. That was also a really, really fun video to do. Have you ever been in a choir? Yes, I have actually. I used to sing in a choir in the last few years of primary school, but I got bored of it, so I left as soon as I left school. What's a feature or aspect of vintage keyboards you wish modern keyboards would incorporate? Well, aside from better switches, obviously, the lack of needing software to program macros. I think it's such a ball on the ankle. Hate it. Conversely, what's a modern feature you wish vintage keyboards had? USB compatibility. My life would be so much easier if I didn't have to individually convert a whole bunch of weird keyboards, which I'm not even very good at to begin with. Other people have to help me do it. What's your favorite sauce? Possibly soy sauce. I love that shit. I could just eat soy sauce on its own. What are your favorite movies? Oh, I have many. I love movies. I'm one of those rare people that prefers movies to series. And I have so many favorite films as well, but I think if I had to pick one, probably Fight Club. Which keyboard software is the worst that you've come across? Probably either the Razer one or the Corsair one. I can't recall off the top of my head anymore. I'd have to watch my own reviews back. That's something people sometimes mistake, by the way. When people ask me a question, I often refer them to a review. But that's not really because I just want extra views. I honestly couldn't give too much of a shit. It's just because my impression at the time was a lot fresher and my memory was much better than I have at the moment. To lube or not to lube a linear switch? I'd say if your switch needs lubing, it's a bad switch and you shouldn't use it to begin with. I don't get it. People don't even try their switches out before they start smearing them with goo all over. I never understood it. People treat it like it's part and parcel of mechanical keyboards. It's just not. They don't need it if they're good. What's your favorite book? 1984, and Animal Farm scores very high as well. Favorite rapper? I fucking hate rap. The only one I can occasionally stomach is Eminem. I have a keyboard with MX Reds and I've noticed that the switches get smoother with use. Can you explain why that happens? You're getting used to the scratchiness. Well guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's quite a lot of footage. I think I broke 4.5 hours filming this. I'll be answering some questions personally written in the comments as well. And like I said, a lot of them I've already answered in previous videos. But anyway, that's it for this video, and see you in the next review.